Alright, so for today we'll be going into Chapter 1, which is basically security principles. Chapter 1 has 6 modules to pick from. You could go through each module and we will be taking each module. For my session, you'll be having a test at the end of each module. I would specially put it possibly around 20 questions each module, just based on past questions and possible questions from the ISC2 and well, let's continue. So basically we have Chapter 1. Chapter 1 has 6 modules under it. Module 1 is about the security concepts of information assurance. That's such a big grammar for saying the information security, InfoSec. So basically we're going to look at that. And you should notice this domain D1 1.1, 1.2. Basically the domains are the chapters, and D1 means Chapter 1. 1.1 means module 1.1, right? So module 1.1. If you scroll through, you should see module 2, and that's basically it, right? So we proceed with this. You might see this when you're attempting the test, so it directs you to where exactly the question has been taken from. D1 means Chapter 1. So we proceed with our first one, and that is module 1. Please remember to ask as many questions as you want. Quite important for you in the learning of this course. I've trained 300 plus professionals, so yes, I know questions are really important because people could ask questions in ways that even you is possibly taking them have not experienced such questions before. So you should be open-minded to listen to enough questions. Yep. There we go, the CIA triad. That's really the first thing you ever learn when it comes to security. Now, what exactly is the CIA triad? The CIA triad is just simply speaking about how information is to be secured. The most basic part of information security, right? Like the most basic thing you should be learning in information security. If you want to secure information, for instance, the CIA should be paramount. It must be there. Like basically, CIA must be there for information to be secured. So what does C stand for? C is confidentiality, I is integrity, and A is availability. I'm going to just ditch this whole thing, just explain it, because you understanding it the first way is way better. So what do we have here? We have the CIA triad. Yeah, I'm having a problem switching between black and white boards, and I don't know, possibly, maybe you like black boards better. So let's try black boards for now, right? CIA triad. So we have confidentiality, and we have integrity, and the last one is availability. As an addition, I'll be explaining authentication because they tend to come together in exams, and authorization. I'm trying to make a video that is quite comprehensive and short at the same time, so please, if anything is not clear, please point it out. Now, when we are talking about confidentiality, take note we are talking about information security here, right? Information security. When we are talking about confidentiality, we are looking at basically the fact that information has not been known to any other person that is not authorized to see that information, right? So if you are not authorized to view information, you are not supposed to see it. That is confidentiality. That is between two people, Mr. A and Mrs. B, who purportedly are sharing some private information. That information should not be seen by a third party, Mr. C. Basically, that's what the confidentiality is all about, right? So you would see in the questions, they try to twist it. They'll probably ask, what rule has been broken? Mr. C saw the files from Mrs. C desk. Mr. C saw an important text message. What has been broken? Confidentiality. Take note of confidentiality. It didn't tamper with the information. It simply saw it. Right? So the best analogy for this that I used to use for my classes is basically that thing that happens when while we were in school and you have that particular girl that you are crushing on real bad and she's the most beautiful person you've ever seen in the world and she's so perfect, you're like, oh, and then you try to send her a message, right? So basically you try to send her a message in class while you're in class, and then you pop out the message. The message states how much you love her. You create a very nice looking poem or whatever Nollywood, Bollywood, or Hollywood teaches us, and then you send it, right? So, but basically, there's a little problem. Mr. C is right in the middle of the communication channel between you and her, and you cannot stand up to transmit this information over to her, so you have to send it first to Mr. C, and he has to deliver that information to Mrs. B, right? To Miss B, let's make it a miss. It's going to be weird if you're dating someone that's a Mrs. right now. Yeah. So, basically, Mr. C is your best friend, and he's sitting close to you, and he's the person who can pass that love message to Miss B, right? So, you send this message down to Mr. C. Mr. C, your best friend, opens the message, reads it, smiles, doesn't do anything on the message, but sends it to Miss B. At that point, confidentiality has been broken. The information is no longer confidential because Mr. C has had access to that information. He has seen it. There's nothing you can do about it. He saw the message. He has seen it. So, of course, it's no longer confidential. I hope that is quite clear. Right? That is about confidentiality. Integrity is way more easier than that, right? So basically, with integrity, we are looking at something much more straightforward, right? You see, with integrity, you do not want that message changed. Rather, it should not have been tampered with or edited or editable. That is what integrity is all about. So same scenario, Mr. A is going to send this message to Miss B, and he has to pass it through Mr. C. The message comes to Mr. C, and basically what happens when Mr. C reads the message. Now Mr. C has a secret crush on Miss B, so Mr. C reads the message, sees what's on it, gets pissed, and changes love to 8, and then sends the message. At this point, he has tampered with that information. That information has lost its integrity. Just as a bonus, when you hear something about confidentiality, right? When you hear an attack on confidentiality, most times you might see the MITM attack coming in, which is the man-in-the-middle attack coming in. When you hear an attack on integrity, it's usually, most times, going to be something related to editing that page. It could be anything. It could be just simply editing the details on the website, which is highly possible. It's very easy to do that. It might be being able to edit a document, being able to just tamper with something. So basically, that is what integrity is all about. So that message has lost its integrity, and now we can basically move on to the next one, right? Which is availability. Now, a common attack on availability is the DDoS attack, because basically it doesn't let anybody have access to that information, right? So, we still have Mr. A, Mr. B, and Mrs. C here. And basically, same scenario, Mr. A sends the message to Mr. C. Mr. C is about to deliver the message to Miss B, but then the teacher or tutor sees the transfer going on, sees what's going on at that point, and intercepts the message and says, hey, Mr. C, bring that letter. So Miss B never receives that letter, and if you're lucky, if your stars are really, really lucky, she doesn't read it to the class, if you're lucky, right? So, on the other hand, Miss B never receives the message. At that point, availability is being destroyed. So what is availability, basically? Timely access to information. These three are basically what you use in any information security posture. So it's always going to be there. CIA triad. For information to be secure, it must be confidential, it must have integrity, and it must be available to the user that is supposed to use it. Authorized user, by the way. Integrity, availability, confidentiality. That's all to it. There's nothing else to it. I hope you've understood that already. Over here in the ISC2, they try to deep dive into it. You could go over here and, of course, learn more. And you could see them explain personally identifiable information. Anything in bold, you could put your hands over it and then get more information about it. When they talk about personal identifiable information, that's all information about you, personally related to you, your name, your date of birth, your age, your SSN, all those other things, basically your information. And when we speak about protected health information, that is about your health details. Or rather the doctor is not supposed to go ahead telling everybody that you have a headache or you have a disease or something like that. Your health information should be private to you. All of these are supposed to be classified as sensitive information. They are not supposed to be out there on the internet, right? So all of this should be protected using the CIA triad. Speaking of which, when we speak about health information, EPA is the one being in charge. The EPA are in charge of the health protection. Just take this, we might actually come back to it. And we have the GDPR being in charge of your data protection. I think this is in the EU, right? In the European Union. So if your country is part of the European Union, they try to use the GDPR to make sure your information is private to you. I hope we're still on the same page, right? So everything in here is explaining what we just explained, and I hope you understand it more from there. I'm trying to make sure this video is not more than 15 minutes long, but it seems, oh my God. All right, so let's just proceed. At this point, you probably left, but let's proceed, right? So the next point we are looking at is authentication. So we have authentication here. And what is authentication all about? I'm going to try to explain this really simply, right? I'm going to attach it with authorization. Now, when we speak about authentication, basically is the process by which the server identifies you. It's the process of identification, right? It's basically asking, who are you? Who are you? And that's when you put in your username and your password to authenticate you on a PC. Meanwhile, authorization is what you have access to, what you have access to. And authorization, of course, comes after you've been authenticated. The best thing about it, the easiest way to explain it is an airport. You come to the airport, you have all your documents and all of that, and you present that, and I'll say, oh yeah, you have to be on flight so, right? You have to be on this flight, and you get into the flight, and on your body pass, of course, you are supposed to be on seat B16 or so, but because you feel like you are, I don't know, you just decided you want to sit with the pilot, on the pilot seat. You're not authorized to be on that seat, right? You're not authorized for it. You're authenticated to be on the flight, but you're not authorized to be on all the seats on the flight, basically. So that's the best way I explain that. You could go ahead to check more on authentication and authorization. But of course, I'm just going to point out some things about authentication. Now, the most common method of authentication is usually username and password, right? So username and password, of course, you know it. If somebody knows your username and password, the person is able to impersonate you. And of course, when you put in your username and password, or you give someone, the person will receive a message like, welcome, Ayomide. Welcome, Ayomide, and of course, it could be called Paul. But the computer believes that he is Ayomide because he knew the username and password, right? So there are other methods of authentication that we know. For instance, you could use biometrics, right, to authenticate. You could use a security question and all of those things. You could use a key card to authenticate. I know most of us are familiar with our ATM cards, and it's also used as a method of authentication to your bank, right? So let's focus on authentication and authorization. We've gotten authorization out of the way. Authorization is what you have access to. But now to look at authentication, we have something more to see. You see, there are three methods of authentication, right? Three methods. The first one is, there's a way the ISC2 put it. Okay, something you know, yes. So we have the something you know in there. And basically it's something that you are aware of, something you have access to, and something you know, like your password or passphrases, just like the username and password we mentioned, is something you know. You could tell someone else. If that person knows it too, the person can become you. Big examples, your username and your password, right? Something you have, like your tokens, your smart cards, your memory cards, basically. If you have all those things, you could be someone, right? An ATM card, a smart card, whatever it is. Something you have is also a method of authentication. And the last one is something you have, like biometrics. But when they talk about something you are, it's something that's part of you. It's not easily transferable, like your voice, like your retina scan, your fingerprint scan. A lot of us use that on our phones now. So that is basically what it is. Something you know, something you have, and something you have. Just to make this a little bit better, something you know is based on your knowledge, right? So we call it knowledge-based. And then we have the next one being something you have, which is possession-based. And something you have is attribute-based. That's basically your attributes, right? So these three are the methods of authentication you have. And what they call this is factors, right? Those are the factors of authentication. So we have knowledge-based factor, possession-based factor, attribute-based factor. When we're talking about attribute-based, it's something you have. Possession-based is something you have. And the last one is obviously something you know. Now that brings us to why we call something single-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication. Single-factor means you're just using one of these. If, for instance, you're unlocking your phone with only the fingerprint, you are using basically an attribute-based factor, right? That means you're using a single factor. Now we have some people that after putting their username and password is something you know, right? Then they have to put in a token that was sent to their device by Microsoft or by any other website they've been on. I hope that is understandable. At that point, what you are having is you are using two different factors, like something you know, and then you're also using something you have. So those two factors are in play at that particular point, which calls it 2FA, right? 2FA is basically like MFA. MFA is multi-factor authentication, and SFA is single-factor authentication. So if you're using more than one of these, you know what you are doing. So when it comes to the ISC2, of course, the questions are a bit technical to try to put you off, but don't worry, you are going to get through with it. All right, so that's all good. We are done with that, and then we have just non-repudiation and privacy. I feel like chapter 1 is so long. I didn't expect it to be this long, right? Okay, as long as you're getting the information, I know more than half of everybody is all right. But anyway, I'm just going to put it up this way because I can't really do much about it. It's necessary that you understand it anyway. So, under the methods of authentication, what we just spoke about is right there: knowledge-based, token-based, and cash-taxes-based. Go in there to learn more about it. And there's a video which we won't be watching, and the next thing is non-repudiation. So basically, what is non-repudiation? It's a document, right? Non-repudiation is a document, an agreement that basically shows that somebody performed an action, right? If you performed an action, or you are part of something, you might be asked to, show a non-repudiation agreement, basically. So what they use it for is so you cannot deny that you didn't do something. It's the same reason why you get receipts. It's the same reason why you get account information. We have some people that go to the banks to complain, and then the bank pulls out your transaction history, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, blah, 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 blah. That transaction history is a form of non-repudiation, basically. So it's just a legal term for all of that. So in case you find a question like that, which obviously there is a question like that, please just be familiar with it. And privacy, your information privacy is really important. And with privacy, basically, there's some information that you just want to be confidential to you. And like we mentioned earlier, the GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation, is a rule that basically applies to everybody in the EU. So if you're in the EU, you have the GDPR protecting you. That's why you get those privacy information or privacy details from all those websites you visit. It's the reason why you are being asked if you want to accept cookies. Am I accepting cookies right now? I don't even know, right? So basically that's all about it, and I think we are good to go. We are very much done with this, and we have a knowledge check here. And if you want to, I'm going to just take you through it a little bit so you can have some idea about it. We're going to retake it. And I think this is the third time we're retaking this. Oh my God, it's 22 minutes already. Scratch that, it's 23 minutes. Wow. Wow. I hope the other modules are not this long. All right, we restart, right? And all you have to do is put this on the right point. Okay, so at this point, where do you think authorization goes into? Please pause the video at this moment because I cannot take time any longer. Time is extremely of essence, and this is going way too long. So, I guess you've selected your answer already. Authorization. The right or permission that is granted to a system entity to access a system or resource, right? The property that data has not been altered in an unauthorized manner, that's information when it's available or made available or disclosed to authorized person or processes. Right of an individual to control the distribution of information about themselves, ensure timely and reliable access. You know what? I'm not just going to read everything. We're just going to put it right there, right? That is authorization. How about authentication? I'm sure you've paused it by now. So let's push it right. Oh, wait. Authorization. Oh, authentication, please. Okay. Great. Validate the identity claimed by the user. Please try to read all the options before you pick any. Confidentiality. Where does confidentiality go under? Have you paused it right now? Okay, so let's go about. All right. Information made available or disclosed to authorized persons or processes. That is our confidentiality. And how about integrity? Remember what we said about integrity, right? Okay, so you've made your answer. This is integrity. About privacy. Do you remember the privacy rules? Oh, there's a link for it. There's a way this website brings it. There's a privacy information or whatever, forgotten, right? So let's just put it there. And non-repudiation, of course, you cannot deny you didn't do something, and availability is obviously timely, manual, and all of that. So if we submit this, we know we are right, and let's proceed to module 2. So this is the end of module 1, and I'll see you on the next video. Hopefully it's shorter than this.